Hey, what's going on, everybody? Leigh Dickey here. Welcome to a brand new episode of Yo Nostalgia, the pop culture history podcast where we cover everything from movies, TV, commercials, toys, fads, trends, anything pop culture within the last 50 to 60 years. You name it, if it happened and is part of the everyday fabric of our lives, it will be covered right here on Yo Nostalgia. Of course, as I said, my name is Leigh Dickey, and this is Yo Nostalgia, your bi-weekly pop culture podcast. Today on Yo Nostalgia, I want to cover and give you my memories of the Miller Boyett sitcom Family Matters. Yes, we're talking Urkel today. It is an Urkel Fest, all things Family Matters, right here this week on Yo Nostalgia. But before we get into all things Family Matters, I want to tell you where you can find Yo Nostalgia. Of course, brand new episodes of Yo Nostalgia are released every other Tuesday on LeighTDickey.com, my official website, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube under Leigh Dickey TV, and wherever podcasts are available. Please do comment, like, share, and subscribe. Find us on your favorite podcast app and player of choice. Rate us 5 stars. Leave us reviews too if you would. Please and thank you. Follow along on social media at Yo Nostalgia Show. Send your comments, questions, and topics that you want covered right here on Yo Nostalgia to yonostalgiashow@gmail.com. And of course, as I said, follow along on social media at Yo Nostalgia Show. Alright, now that all the housekeeping is out of the way, let's get into my memories of Family Matters and all things Steve Urkel right here on Yo Nostalgia. Alright, so yes, my memories of Family Matters. To be honest, it was, as a kid, because I grew up right in the 90s, right in that era. As a kid, growing up, I loved Family Matters. Now, I am from Canada. I currently live in Canada, still born and raised. And we got exposure to pretty much everything that was available in the States is also available up here. Even back then, with syndication rights and, first run episodes on ABC, we did have access to Family Matters, Full House, and things like that, Perfect Strangers, and what have you. So, my memories of Family Matters, I love the show as a kid. Probably, I love the theme song, which is done by Jesse Frederick, who also did the themes to Perfect Strangers, Step by Step, and Full House. So, it's cool. Jesse Frederick, for those of you who grew up in the 90s, he is the composer du jour. He is the pièce de résistance when it comes to TV themes in the 90s when you're referring to composers, not taking anything away from say John Williams or Danny Elfman, but when it came to the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and even into the mid and late 90s, Jesse Frederick's name is right up there. He is the man when it comes to the Miller Boyett family of television shows. And that theme song, the As Days Go By, the theme to Family Matters, I love that theme song. As days go by, there's a bigger love than the family. I can't sing, and I'm sorry to your ears for that audible mess, but I love that theme, to be honest with you. And as a kid, I loved Urkel as a kid, just because, did I do that? I was an impressionable kid, and I loved the show. Urkel was great. I loved Reginald VelJohnson. He played Carl Winslow, and Jo Marie Payton as Harriet. It was amazing. I loved the dynamic of the show. And to be quite honest with you, I still want to love the show as an adult, but I really can't. I don't know. I just don't find it as funny anymore. I do understand that shows say, Family Matters and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, they tackled various issues, as well as, say, Beverly Hills 90210. They tackled various topical issues from that time frame in the late 80s, early 90s, when it came to, say, teens and youths and things like that. But as an adult now, all these years later, because it's been off the air for when you're hearing this, like 22 years or something like that, I can't really find it that funny. Like, some of my big memories of Family Matters are Steve Urkel, Jaleel White basically cosplaying as Bruce Lee for a while. Steve Urkel, Jaleel White in space. And I remember the fact that he was chasing, I forget the actress's name who played Laura Winslow, but he was just chasing Laura Winslow forever. And they finally get together, like, at the end and get married and what have you. They go off right off into the sunset. But it was like, I remember the dynamic between the Winslows and Steve Urkel. Like, Steve's parents were never around at all or all the time, like, ever. Because I don't think they were mentioned in the show, but I don't think they were ever there. They were never, like, cast. They were never, like, the characters themselves, I don't think ever showed up. And in addition to, say, the Steve Urkel character and his sort of lust and wanting of Laura Winslow, there's also, I think, was it Cousin Myra that showed up? Or, like, there was this Myra character that I remember he was with her for a while. And, I mean, I prefer that pairing better than the Laura Winslow character and Steve and Jaleel White and what have you. But I don't know. I mean, I suppose that's the way that the producers wanted to take it, since they were such an integral, dynamic part to the show. Like, yes, it was basically the Steve Urkel show with a family next door, wrapped around it. But in my opinion, I preferred the Steve Urkel Myra pairing or whatever, what have you, that was. I thought they were great together. I mean, not taking I suppose I am taking things away from, like, the Laura Winslow character, but I always thought that, like, looking back on the show as an adult, when you watch it back with adult eyes, I guess, she was a total witch. Like, she reminded me of a lot of the, the people that I knew and that know now, who just, like, they will toss you to the side like you're nothing and you're a piece of garbage. And I was like, how can somebody want that? And then I realized, I went through that too. So, like, I guess the yearning and the wanting is always still going to be there. That's just, I don't know. That's the way I kind of, like, want to sort of put logic into this thing, or project logic into, like, a family sitcom. I mean, I remember Jaleel White as Steve Urkel just constantly inventing or coming up with crazy things, like Urkel in space. I remember that. And as I said earlier, Jaleel White as Steve Urkel just playing up and cosplaying as Bruce Lee for a while. And then there was, times where Urkel wouldn't be as, quote-unquote, geeky or nerdy, right? Not that there's a problem with that. I mean, I'm a nerd myself. I do several podcasts. I'm an audio and podcast and voiceover and radio nerd. I'm a media nerd, okay? I'm an absolute nerd when it comes to that stuff, as you can tell, because I'm doing this show. But, I mean, nothing wrong with being a geek or a nerd or what have you. It's just when Jaleel White was playing Urkel, and then he would go to be basically playing Stefan Urkel, or himself, pretty much. I was like, what is this? It was turning into they were going down so many avenues that I honestly don't think the show needed to go down as many avenues as it did. It was like Stefan Urkel, Steve as cosplaying as Bruce Lee, and I'm sure the entire family got in on the let's cosplay as Bruce Lee for an episode or something like that. And then Steve, this teleportation pod, Steve in space. And I completely forgot that Jo Marie Payton left the show towards the end of the show's final season. She just kind of went, all right, my contract's up, and I'm sure that everybody involved with the show kind of felt the same way, that the show has run out of steam. We're at the end. And I don't know whether Jo Marie Payton was just like, yeah, my contract's up. I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And her contract, I think, was up in the middle of like the ninth and final season. And then they brought in someone else. I forget that actress's name as well. Sorry. But they brought her in to basically finish out the final episodes of the final season. And I don't remember much of it, to be honest with you. I do know that Brighton McClure, who's now known as Brighton James, I'm not even sure if McClure is still like his legal last name anymore, but he is on The Young and the Restless as Devon Hamilton these days. But he got his start on Family Matters as I think the aunt's child. He was the TV child of Thelma Hopkins, and I don't know. I just thought that like adding it just kind of like it made it seem like this just discombobulated. I know it was a family sitcom, and sitcoms are normally all over the place anyway, but it just added. Looking back on it, it just added to like this discombobulated mess, and to like when it comes to the stuff that I remember, this theme song, one of my favorites. It sticks out. I love that theme. Again, As Days Go By Jesse Frederick. I think he performed the song as well, and it's amazing. I don't know. I love the theme song. The show, it had its moments for me. Like I remember Darius McCrae and his best friend on the show, the character Waldo. I thought that, yeah, okay, so he was basically comic relief, as was Urkel, obviously, but in a much more supporting role. And I don't know, I thought that he was good. He was a good character on the show. I thought he was played really well. And you had, again, as I said, like Jo Marie Payton left in the middle of the ninth season, and it was just kind of like, okay, so what do? You bring somebody in, and then you finish off the show. I don't know, I think after 9 seasons, the show kind of ran its course, had its run, and you didn't really need another year. It just, to be honest with you, looking back at it, I mean, as much as I love Reginald VelJohnson, like I've gone back through his career. He was in Like Mike. He was in the first couple Die Hard films with Bruce Willis as Sergeant Al Powell, and he's great in those roles, like Al Powell, Carl Winslow. I just, but for it to run 9 years, it amazes me that the show ran 9 years, because yes, I grew up watching the show, but towards the end, I don't remember much of it, because at that point, I think I was just on to something else. My mind was occupied with other things, and I was just elsewhere. I mean, I love the show, don't get me wrong, it was great. I know that Jaleel White, obviously, while Family Matters was going on, I think the rumor is that he couldn't grow any facial hair. And, to be honest with you, I think that's too bad. Just let the guy grow facial hair. He's going through it anyway. My theory is he can't grow facial hair. And I think I heard something to the similar effect where Joey Lawrence of Blossom and Melissa and Joey fame, along with like Gimme a Break and other things, he had to, during the run of Blossom in the early to mid 90s, contractually he had to keep his hair long. And I think he said, I heard in an interview where he couldn't wait to like just shave it or cut it or keep it really short. And to be honest with you, I can see why you would want to just cut it. Like, if the producers of a show tell you got to keep your hair contractually long, of course, if contractually you've agreed to that, you have to live up to your contract. And the same thing with Jaleel White. If you've contractually agreed to not grow facial hair, you have to live up to that agreement. Like, I've seen him in other things. I remember he was the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog in the various, obviously, Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons. Of course, Sonic the Hedgehog being the Sega mascot, or one of the major games on, say, the Sega Genesis, which I love. And the fact that he was the voice of Sonic during those years, completely awesome. I saw him in this really weird, like, sort of B movie. It was one of those, like, Crocosaurus meets Mecha Shark or whatever it was. And a few years back, he did a guest spot on an episode of Hawaii Five-0, which just recently ended its run after 10 seasons. And it's cool to see them pop up every now and again. I wonder what the rest of the cast is up to these days. I don't know what Reginald VelJohnson or Joe Marie Payton or anybody else is up to, other than like Brighton McClure, who, as I said earlier, is portraying Devon Hamilton on The Young and the Restless. Don't ask me how I know that. Yeah, I'll admit that I do pop in and watch that soap opera from time to time because, you know, to be honest with you, my mother is a fan and she watches it, and I basically grew up watching The Young and the Restless as a kid because, well, it was always on in my house. So, I mean, there you go. And, you know, I like Family Matters, love it. You can't go wrong with it, even though, like, if I can't see myself, like, having the same love for it now as a man who is an adult, as opposed to me being a kid. Like, don't get me wrong, as a kid, I loved Urkel, okay? Loved Urkel. I thought, to be honest with you, I thought the character who played Maxine was really attractive. I was like, wow, she's cute. Like, I just thought she was hot, okay? Like, I'm not even gonna deny that. I thought the actress who played Maxine was really, really attractive, okay? And it's one of those things where I guess that was a reason that I kept watching the show, other than the crazy, quirky things that they would get up to. I remember, like, the Winslows not being as fond of Urkel as he was of them, right? Like, other than, like, his, say, infatuation or love for Laura Winslow, the rest of the family didn't really come around until, like, things happened. I remember, like, Urkel saving Carl Winslow's life once after he got, or, like, you know, performing CPR on Carl Winslow after he, you know, stuck his finger in an electrical socket or got electrocuted somehow and kind of just, you know, got shocked, had like an electric shock and kind of sort of fell over, and they were just like, oh God, what do we do? And then obviously Steve comes in, CPR, yada, 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 come to light that, like, from what I remember seeing, Carl was rather nasty with Steve, and still Steve comes back, saves his life, and, you know, what do you do? Like, I remember an episode where Eddie, played by Darius McCrary, gets pulled over in a neighborhood, and then, like, he gets pulled over by two, you know, Caucasian cops, and a big sort of deal ensues, some sort of, like, racial profiling thing, and that was big. And, you know, shows like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air did things like that as well. Of course, tackling various social issues of the time. And that's one thing I can always admit, like, they gave me laughs and they tackled issues of the time that, and in a shame, and I'm not trying to get political, or I'm not trying to, you know, bring the episodes down at all, but the issues of the time are still somewhat, if not prevalent today, and it still happens. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. So, I mean, you know, my memories of Family Matters theme song, loved it. Play it constantly. Maybe I'll turn that into my ringtone one of these days, but I certainly want to, because it's a theme song that I remember as days go by, being the start of Brighton James's career. Reginald VelJohnson, you know, I remember him as not only Carl Winslow, but as Sergeant Al Powell from the first two Die Hard films. Of course, you have Urkel, you have Laura Winslow, and the various characters. Cousin Myra. Like, I remember them having, you know, when the Cousin Myra came into the fold, I think, what was her name? Michelle Thomas or Michelle Williams? One of the two. When she came into the fold, the Laura Winslow character gets jealous. And I thought, okay, well, it's nothing that they haven't done before in sitcoms or other TV shows. But I thought that it worked. It worked well, the whole jealousy on Laura's part, and then Steve being happy with Myra for a while, even though I preferred the Myra and Steve sort of pairing and connection. But of course, the producers went with Laura and Steve, because why not? They were the titular characters. They were the main pairing on the show. I thought it went well. It went over really well, and that's why it lasted as long as it did. But there you are, with my memories of Family Matters right here on Yo Nostalgia. Please do comment, like, share, and subscribe as this wraps up another episode of Yo Nostalgia. Of course, new episodes are released every 2 weeks, every other Tuesday, right here on YouTube under Leigh Dickey TV, my official website, LeighTDickey.com, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever podcasts are available. Please do rate us 5 stars and leave us reviews too if you would. Follow along on social media at Yo Nostalgia Show. Send your comments, questions, and topic requests to YONOSTALGIASHOW@gmail.com. All right, I've been Leigh Dickey. This has been another episode of Yo Nostalgia. Thank you all again for watching, listening, commenting, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this show. Love you all for it. But we will see you all in 2 weeks with another episode of Yo Nostalgia. Again, this has been Yo Nostalgia. I've been Leigh Dickey, and I am signing off. Peace.